Select Board. Order. Jeff. Kathy here. Dan's here.
John is here.
Okay. Are there public comments on non-agenda items? Is there anyone online? Okay. There is no chairman's report. Is there anything on the action items that anything you would like to add or?
So I think last time I did ask that we add the Ocean Street decision back on Atkins, if we could do that, please. And then the short-term rental bylaw target date was today, but are we gonna discuss it at the next meeting? It's not on today's agenda.
That's part of the possible.
Yes.
That's part of the articles.
Oh, part of the articles, got it,
Yep.
okay. And the Forster Road water line, which we need to have John available.
Yeah, so when we do the capital discussion in the next meeting.
Okay. And will we have information on the DPW facility study?
Yes, I'm hoping that we do.
Okay. The first item on our agenda is an alcohol license transfer public hearing. Yes,
I move that the select board open a public hearing of the transfer of annual line alcohol premises, store, beverage license. Main Street.
discussion?
Yes. Yes to the motion.
Open. Dan says yes. Kathy says yes. Jeff says yes. Okay. You're standing. I think you would like to speak. Please identify yourself and give us an address just for the minutes.
Good evening, my name is Attorney John Morady in the Marcus offices, East Lake Central Avenue, and with me is Kumar Patel. Your address.
Oh, we never should be board, middle of the night, in one night, one night.
I think we have that in the paperwork.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
We're here on behalf of Sea Breeze Convenience LLC, made plans to stand this LLC to purchase Sea Breeze variety at 8 Beach Road.
Street.
8 Beach Street. It's a gas station convenience store. We're seeking approval tonight of the transfer of the beer line, package store license at that location, approval of Kumar Patel as manager of record, and approval of the pledge of license of inventory to Rockland Trust Company as Rockland Trust is going to finance this transaction. This is a transfer to new ownership. There's no change to the store footprint or building. We made this tip certified. Got 3 to 4 additional employees should be tip certified, and they will use an ID scanner for a sort of sale ID checking system. The store hours will be 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. with alcohol sales to be 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's permitted by state law. It's going to remain a gas station convenience store. You won't see much anything change of business operation, just new ownership. Maintenance can be very experienced on alcohol sales. So with that, what many questions the board have?
No questions, all the paperwork looked in order.
Jeff?
It's pretty straightforward.
Same here. Yes.
And the board's going to take place probably in April, depending on the season.
Oops. Jeff. I think you're next.
I'm next. If we should close the evidentiary, I make a motion to close the evidentiary.
It will be a session.
Yes.
Okay. Is there public comment? Okay,
Then I will make the motion to close the evidentiary portion of the public hearing.
Second,
Jeff,
yes.
Kathy, yes. Anne says yes.
John, yes.
And I guess I'll move that the select board approve the transfer of the annual wine and malt off premises package store beverage license at 8 Beach Street, held by Sea Breeze Variety, Inc., to Sea Breeze Convenience LLC.
Is there a second?
Second,
John?
Yes.
Anne says yes. Kathy?
Yeah.
And Jeff says yes. Great.
But
Yep.
Wish you both great success.
Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to review and consider adjustment to the water bill for 33 Harbor Street. And I am going to recuse myself because I am a friend of the people who are requesting, and I don't think I trust myself to be unbiased. John,
You're okay. All right, so the issue is the review of this adjustment of the water bill. Is there, is it Mr. Panetta?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Okay, good evening.
I'm very grateful to all of you for putting this on the agenda and making time for what is admittedly a minor matter. Thank you. It was just a shocking bill, and the problem was we didn't seem to have any warning of a change in the rate structure. Maybe it was communicated. It certainly wasn't communicated to us. If we'd known our bill was going to be coming in at triple the average yearly bill and double the biggest bill we'd ever had before, we would have adjusted our consumption pattern, of course. We just didn't get the word. So if you're willing to consider some kind of adjustment, thank you. And we certainly realize you may need to deliberate and come to a decision and inform us down the line. And that's certainly fine. We'll accept whatever you come up with. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Panetta. Jeff, do you have any thoughts, questions?
my concern is, I mean, Greg, we've posted this in several places, right?
So we did not send out, the notice prior to the season start.
You did not send a
We
notice.
did not, we had
Yeah.
notices in the paper, we had, various social media postings, Tiffany did for her updates in the curriculum as well as my article. So it was out there. Was it a direct notice to every customer? No.
But to the major users, that would have been, I guess we're in that category. That would have been very helpful.
Right, so we did, work with all the major users in terms of looking at their bills. And the water task force was working. I don't have in front of me who all that included. But I know the task force had been reaching out to the different high-end users.
Yeah, I was a member of the task force at the time, and I know that we had a list of the top users. I don't know where you were on the list,
Yeah.
Mr. Panetta, but I suspect you were up there. And we did contact a few of the very top users just to kind of get opinions. I wouldn't say to let them know this is what was going to happen or not happen, but to get opinions on this is what we're thinking and what are your thoughts. So it was a discussion that went on probably for 2 years. Certainly a year and a half, that we were discussing changing the water rates. And I know that we had looked at one point in time and decided we better delay it at least 6 to 9 months. It was going to happen in 2023 and it moved to 2024. So there was a lot of public dialogue. I can tell you there were at least 2 public meetings, public hearings associated with the discussion with regard to the costs. And then as Greg has mentioned, there were articles in the Cricket on July 26th and also on June 28th. In consecutive months, there were topics where water costs, water rates, and the changing of the water rates were in there, as well as, of course, the tide that Tiffany puts together.
I mean, my concern is we do have one person, everybody in the world's gonna be happy. So,
Yeah, well, Jeff, I certainly understand that.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, please. All right, Jeff, are you, any more questions or,
no, I just,
okay, Kathy?
I had one question regarding, Renetta, how do you typically stay informed as to what's going on in the town? Because our modus operandi is to make sure big changes, are published in the Cricket, social media, et cetera, because every time we make a change, doing something, a direct mail approach is quite expensive.
Yes,
So,
Understood.
I think to John's point, we communicated multiple times, held public hearings, et cetera. So I'm just, we understand the shock, but as citizens, we all have a responsibility to try and stay informed as best we can. So if you have other suggestions, other than a direct mail, because that's just too expensive, we're a small.
Understood.
We can't do that for everything.
but if the rate is going to double or, triple the average bill, that's an enormous change and with no warning. Wow.
So I think, Greg did mention that we hit the heavy hitters, I don't know where Mr. Panetta, fell on the list. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of leaning with Jeff here. If we do it we can't just do it for one person. We would have to do it for other people. And I feel like we beat that horse dead.
I did check with the water clerk. Of course, you're not alone in being a top user. How many other people got in touch with the water clerk and said, what's going on?
Yeah.
And there was one other person that asked, but they did not pursue it. They just said, whoa, I've got a big water bill here. And the billings for the very top tier did go up about 50%.
Yeah.
Now, very few people, and you are in the few people category, hit that top tier, which is tier number 4 now. It was tier number 6, but very few people, and they'll only hit during the summer quarter, which of course is when
And we had a drought year.
you hit it. Yes. So, water was people that were in that top tier. There were just a few, but only one other person really came back.
Yeah.
Everyone else, either they were aware or they were not aware and they just paid the bill. I don't know, but it was not, the phone was not ringing off the hook
Oh.
in that
All right.
regard. So I understand that your bills went up and I don't know how far you are in the highest tier in the summer, but apparently enough the
Our normal annual is $1,000 or so, and this year it was
2,000 or something.
2,600.
Okay, all right.
That's quite a change.
And that top tier went up from about $9.26 up to
Yeah.
14.
Now, my neighbor said my bill was $6,000. So, that's top tier. We're not.
That may be on a first name basis with some people on the water task force. That's a person probably in that category.
Well,
So
thank you for your
that's
consideration.
a lot. We appreciate it.
yeah, I certainly feel for you, but.
If you'd like some sort of a payment schedule, not that
No, no,
makes a whole
no,
lot
no.
of difference, but
Thank you for taking it up. We appreciate it.
okay.
We'll
Kind
certainly.
of adjust usage. And the overall objective here is to adjust the water usage in town, which is very high, especially compared to our neighboring towns. We're trying to get the usage down, and of course, rates are one way to try and encourage people to use less water.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I thank you for taking the time to come down and
Thank you for considering my letter.
thank
Thanks very
you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Get hand back.
Yep.
CPC is next.
Sorry.
And this is what I said, thank you.
It's not generally the same.
Yes. That's the flaw.
Just the person I know.
This is the flaw.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Community Preservation Committee project review. If someone here,
Jack, Jack Burke is on the line.
Good evening, everybody. Jack Burke from the Community Preservation Committee. Before you tonight, you have our annual list and slate of projects that we will firm up at our meeting this Thursday evening. But we would like you to take a look at it, and we appreciate any comments you may have, questions, and we look for your support coming into the April town meeting.
thank you. Jeff, do you have any?
Just a question, could you just refresh my memory on what the focus is for the CPA funds?
Yes, CPA statute allows us to give grants in 3 areas: historical preservation, parks and recreation as a second tier, and community housing. So those are the 3 areas that we can accept applications and review. There's a very stringent set of guidelines that the state has given us, and you may see on the spreadsheet tonight that there was one application from the downtown improvement that we could not act on because it was not an allowable project.
Yeah, Jackie, I did have a question about the historic street lamps, and so they don't qualify, whatever the definition is. Maybe there was nothing to restore, they were building something new.
That is correct, John. The guideline for historic preservation is for us to spend money on restoring something that is already in existence and not creating a new asset. You cannot create a historic asset.
Right, I suspected, although they were a nice touch, and they are a nice touch, where they do exist. Question, so the total is 692, which is a lot. How does that stack up against previous years in terms of the amount of money allocated?
Okay, up in the left-hand column, you'll see that we had unreserved balances coming into the year of $330,000 sitting in the bank. To the right, you'll see fiscal year 26, we estimate $441,263 is new surcharge money, and a state match estimated at 18% of 79,427 for a total of 520 roughly. Add the 330 to that, and that gives us a budget this year of 850,690. So annually, it's about the same amount. It goes up about 2.5% a year, roughly, for the surcharge. However, the state match has gone down considerably in the last several years due to the lack of real estate sales, because the funds that go into the state trust are raised by a fee on the deeds. So there have been a lot less real estate transactions. And the second part of that reduction is a lot of the big cities and towns have gone into the program. There's now 190 cities and towns of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts that are in the program, including the big cities like Boston, Cambridge, Medford, Worcester, Springfield. So we started off at 100% in 2005 in Manchester, and now it's 18.
Okay.
Really, I'm sorry, I don't know if that answered your question. It is.
No, the question
It is
is-
kind of typical of what we've done. You'll see that we have 2 big items this year. One is for the rotunda for 300,000, and the other is 250,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust. That's been an annual item over the last half dozen years that the town has supported as the trust tries to increase their balances to try to do something. As you know, Manchester's very expensive and it's difficult. I know they have about a 1.2 to 1.4 million, I believe, right now in their balance, and they're working very hard on some properties, and they hope to come to us this year with something. The 300,000 with the rotunda is similar to some other big items that we've had, including the Chowder House and Crowell Chapel. But the answer to your question, this is kind of a typical year that we've had. Early on, when the amount of surcharge funds were very low, when we were at 0.5%, we pretty much spent all of it every year. And projects like the rotunda and Crowell Chapel and the library had to be done in several phases over several years. And now with the additional funding, we can handle a lot of the big projects in 1 year. Like the Pine Street field project was a $600,000 project 2 years ago that we were able to fund in 1 year because we had enough balances on hand.
Okay, so the number is typical. I'm just looking at last year's number. There was no, last year's, the total was 481,000. So maybe that was a down year.
No, the 481 included the state match, I believe.
Yes, yeah, I'm talking about what the awarded monies that we spent on projects.
Yeah, but
So-
we don't pay too much attention to that. It's basically what the applications are that come in.
Yeah, okay. This is well, the 300,000 is a very big hit, obviously, but
Yes, and we've had those big hits several times over the years. And
good. I'm good.
Just so folks understand, that 300,000 for the rotunda is the local
Yeah, that's
match.
cool.
And we are hoping to receive a couple of large grants, about $1 million apiece, to do the bulk of the funding.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, the CPC does have the ability to use our funds for bonding if there was ever a situation where we needed to come up with a larger amount of money, say several $1 million, we could do a bond over 15, 20 years.
Is there anyone online who?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything from anyone. It sounds as if the select board is likely to approve or to endorse these awards. Thank you very much, Jack, for background information on all of this.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good. Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the commercial mooring update discussion. Greg, you want to start this or have fun on?
I'll quickly turn it over to Brian.
Okay.
So Brian has gone through process of looking through this to see if there was interest. Initially, there were some 60-odd folks who expressed interest. We thought maybe 10 of them were going to go forward. They indicated that they wanted to go forward, but I think they, in the end, decided not to. So Brian kept going back to the wait list and eventually worked their way down, and it has turned out that at this point, no one from the wait list that have been on it for a year or more has acted on giving a moment to them.
Update that.
Okay, good. So please take it over, Brian.
12 spots available through Manchester Marine. There are 30 people who are on the wait list who are still interested. We have 5 spots that have been taken.
Okay.
Yeah. In 2 throttles. They haven't completely committed, but they've indicated that they are likely to. So that means there are 9 other eligible candidates as program is laid out right now. So everyone left on the list, the 30 candidates left, are all people who received the initial email. The entire wait list received this email on 15, indicating that the program is going to be offered. Followed up the next day when we got the rate sheet from Manchester Marine, circulated that to all of them. At that point, we then were waiting for the people on the wait list to respond to say, I'm interested. And they were designated from top of the list, bottom of the list. So we start working through the process, going to offered, candidates passed on them, we going down the list of the next name. So by taking this, I said 9 left eligible. So I think the question is, if we get through these 9 eligible folks, that leaves 14 more on the list who all went on the wait list between June of last year and January of this year. There is a 1-year hold. If we go through these 9 candidates and there's 2 or 3 or 4 spots left, can Manchester Marine?
I have a suggestion. And I will admit the suggestion came to me when I thought that there were no takers. But even though there are some takers, I would hate to see the warrants go empty. I would hate to see Manchester Marine, anyone find a candidate, they know, okay, that here's, pay your $15, get on the waiting list, and Manchester Marine gets to select its customers. I think that's not what we intended. So my suggestion is that you go back to Manchester Marine and say, we've had trouble filling the spaces. Why don't you put out a lower cost or different cost and conditions, and we will reopen it. And that, if that fills the missing spots, then fine. Otherwise, just repeat that process until the spots are filled. And everybody who gets a spot pays whatever the final price is.
Okay,
A reverse auction.
A reverse
Yeah.
auction, exactly.
yeah. So if the spot's been offered to every candidate on the list,
Everybody on the wait list,
every person on the wait list.
So that's including.
Including the less than a year.
Including
So
the-
that-
not including the less than a year people.
Right, I understand, they're in their own circle here. I think Manchester Marine is gonna say, what does the town feel like is a fair?
We are open to the market.
I mean, I guess my presumption is that people aren't jumping at it because the price is too high.
Well, what is the price?
Price is 35 feet minimum.
Yeah.
At $250 a foot.
Yeah,
$250
About
8750,
87.
$87.50.
Yeah,
That's a lot just for more.
$8,750.
$8,750 is, and Manchester Marine is paying for probably a 45-foot at $150. The normal water.
they were $15 a foot.
Yeah, 15 foot.
So I suspect one thing they'll say is, well, I think what we'll do is we'll wait until June. And then the handful of people who've been on the wait list then will then be approached them first. Because they'll have been on the wait list for a year,
I'm,
1 year.
yes, I know it says 1 year.
So once we hit June 10th, and those folks who went on that date reach that point, then they become eligible for the program. So
How many people is that?
so there's a total of 14 more on the list. As far as the breakdown goes, the majority went on in January. So it's probably 3 who went on in June.
There are only 3 people that are not on the, that are not eligible because
There
they're.
are 14 that aren't eligible, who went on the list between June of last year
Okay, and,
and January of this year.
okay,
So those are the 14 people on the entire wait list who are not candidates for one of those warrants.
what's the concern with people that are on there less than a year?
The concern is that Manchester Marine can say,
Yeah,
you are a customer you'd probably like and can pay for.
yeah,
So pay the $15, get on the list.
and then
And then-
you can do business.
But
we
we're,
can do this.
but we're still going from the top to the bottom.
We are.
No matter what.
Correct.
Yes, but we've gone from the top to the bottom at 8,750 and we don't have customers.
So
But there's 14 more potential customers.
Right.
So I think we should exhaust those 14 and then start.
Yeah, we've given a window of, what, a couple of months now or a month and a half?
I sent out the first email on January 15th, so
Okay.
it's a month that the regulation has been in place and that we've used that process in order to fill those spots in the harbor.
I kind of agree with Andrew. I think we need some kind of a buffer, timing buffer. Maybe a year isn't the right amount of time, but you don't want to get into the situation where someone just pays the $15 and automatically gets a mooring, It feels a little.
But we've been in that window for a month now.
Right, so. So. These folks are gonna remain on the wait list and. Next January, we're gonna hope that some spots open up.
Yep, and then they'll be
And
eligible.
then they'll be eligible, just like these folks who. Went on in June. So
So you have 14
total folks
that
who are
would
not
be eligible in,
starting June
oh, June.
through January. Yeah,
And then how many are after that?
that's the bottom of the list.
So that's everybody who's less than, everybody who's less than a year would have been on the list for a year in June?
So,
Okay, so it's not 14.
the total number of people who are not eligible, according to the regulations, right now it's 14.
Okay,
Some of those went on the wait list back last June. Some went on the wait list this January. So.
okay. How many would be eligible in June?
Or how many were added to the wait list in 2024?
Of the 14. So I have to guess.
Sure.
Let's say that there are 4 or 5 that went on in 2024. And then the balance,
So that's
In the past 2 months.
so that's not enough
To fill the 9.
to fill the 9.
well, we still have 9 people that haven't responded. So we're not at that point yet. I'm here because I wanted to give an update and express that it could be that Manchester Marine would come to you to ask for an exception to fill those spots. This is just a preemptive.
I mean, I think that another option for them is to let people pay by the side of the boat, right? Instead of trying to collect,
Yep.
and so the people aren't dying for it because the price is too high. So this is an open market, Before we go changing a whole bunch of stuff on our side, why can't they do a price adjustment to meet the needs of the market?
The only problem is that we're charging them
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
rate.
they have a specialized relationship with those moorings, right? We're allowing them to have those moorings, kind of tie them up, if you will.
How many feet are we charging them
We charge them, it's 40 feet.
for?
Yeah, 40 feet. That's what we've always charged them for, 40 feet.
So I bet they're paying $600.
Yep.
And it's thousands and thousands. That's not a major factor in their decision process. They just want to get people on these moorings. At some number,
Yes.
the highest number they can get. 87 may not be the number,
Mhm.
maybe 77 is the number, I don't know.
What's the danger of just waiting to go on news? What's the, we're just waiting, we just sort of play this out. This is what they did this year, and it's just next year.
So I'll tell them that, they can go through the 9 folks that are still eligible. In June, they can go to the folks who've been on for a year, who have been on for a year, so they would be eligible. And then after that, they can't fill the spots, they'll just have to wait.
It's not like we're-
They can change their number.
Oh, they can
No,
change
they
that,
can't, they can't, if they are in,
But
They
the
can't-
transit number, you gotta.
It's for everybody.
Yeah.
So I felt like.
so, and which, if they change the number, you have to start from the top again.
That's, yeah.
Like we do with the people who have signed on. Like,
Well, they get the lower number.
They get it.
right, but they might not have made it because the lower number, there might have been people ahead of them.
Yep.
Who might have taken it.
Yep.
So it's just,
I'm not,
Scenario.
yeah,
I'm a little worried about.
that's a good point. I'm not terribly afraid of them starting all over again.
Right.
The signing warrants is the warrants, so.
Well, and if mooring's go unused this year, then you can get back to town.
That's their price feedback. Right, that's their price feedback.
Well, they can still use them as transients, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
they can,
So,
so that will be my message. If they can't be filled, I can't afford long enough people to fill those last 5 spots out of the 9. We're going to have to wait till June to,
That's only gonna do a couple more, sounds like.
yeah, well, we'll see. We may not get there.
Right.
So might be 1 or 2, who knows?
Refresh my memory, do we have a, part of our policy? Do we track moorings that are not used for a period of time and then we
Yeah.
take them back, so.
Absolutely. So we didn't want to vacant for 1 season. And by June 30th, the second year.
So that would apply to these particular moorings as well. If they can't fill them for a couple of years and they're not using them, I would say we would take them back to putting in mooring.
but they can still use them as
They-
service.
they-
Oh, they
transit.
can, but I'm saying if
they
they
would-
don't,
They
Or
will,
they will, yeah.
They will. they will be used. Just may not be for seasonal. We have transient that, I mean. You have a question?
Yeah. So we're at a wait and see situation. Yes.
I,
Really no change in policy is what it is.
this is no change in policy that as people get to have been on the waiting list for a year, they become eligible.
Yeah.
Um,
That'll be the last.
I
figure.
think if Manchester Marine does show, I would like you to propose a method that would allow Manchester Marine to lower its prices, which is to say, they pick different price and conditions, you tell everybody. I think that would give them the opportunity to use all of their points. If they're not interested in that, so be it.
I'm happy to propose it.
Okay, thank you
So-
very much.
You're welcome. Time to go. Time to go.
Okay, but yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda are the cell signaling technology sewer updates.
Well, actually, yes, you've been finding its way through the permitting process. We did the review, of the planning board. Outcome there. Part of the conditions, there were a number of improvements that CST is responsible for town property, town roads. Get the other into schedule for us to do that. So we have an escrow, so there's three things. One is an escrow account, establishing escrow account for those dollars that CST is contributing, 1.3 billion. So that's thing number one. And number two is an agreement regarding installation of the water and sewer. So again, fresh your memory, the town collaboration with CST applied for the Mass Works grant, received 3.5 million to extend new water and sewer lines up Forest Mill under 128 to the property. And so CST agreed to be responsible for any cost above 3.5 million. So that's what this second agreement does, establishes that they will indeed be paying the additional cost, probably in a couple $100,000 range. Don't have final numbers, but those are looking like to be. It also allocates sewer flow to CST. It does that in two phases. The first phase is broken down into three sub-phases. So in phase one, in terms of the sewer flow, it's 27,000 gallons, 27.6 is the number. And that's for phase one and for phase two, as well as for flow for the existing bank. So that 27.6 is divided up, 12,000 apiece for each phase, and the remainder for the bank. So they would pay the connection fee for that 27,600 gallons at $15 a gallon, comes to 414,000. But then they also have agreed to extend the water and sewer line beyond where it was going to stop to serve the new biolab and extend it to the town right away and out. So that was worth $100,000 for the vendor to complete. So CST has agreed to pay for that, and we subtract it from their connection. So their net connection fee is $314. And they agree to pay that by a year from this June. And then furthermore, they are seeking additional flow for potential phases 3 and 4, which would be from years 10 to 12, starting today, basically, this year. And that would be up to an additional 18,000 gallons, assuming that they had to use the full 27.6. Which is probably not likely. Those are based on Title V flows, which tend to be pretty conservative. So their actual flows are likely to be low. Just trying to put my finger on it. Yeah, 18,500 gallons. The phases 3 and 4. Now that would, if we don't have that much, then they obviously wouldn't get that. But they're asking for whatever amount is up to that amount is available. Yeah. So currently, the comprehensive waste management plan allocates some 62,000 gallons to the LCD. And so depending on what happens over the years, we could always add more flow to it, but that's the current number that's allocated to the LCD. And so for phases 3 and 4, they would pay an additional connection fee, but whatever the new connection fee rate is at the time that they would pay 10 years from now. So that's the second agreement. And then the third agreement is the actual easement for the water and sewer lines that are traversing CST property so that the town has permanent access to maintain those town pipes. So those are the three different agreements that are before you, that meet your comments, and hopefully eventual sign off. If there's any issues or concerns, we can do some tweaking if necessary. That's before you today.
So the escrow, that's basically if for some reason the project was abandoned, right? What is the escrow?
The escrow account is actually, they put the 1.3 million, but we draw down from that account as we do those improvements. So as we build
Oh, so that's in relation to this.
to the permit, which requires a bike lane, for example, on School Street,
Okay.
from the interchange up to Atwater. So that's one piece. The other piece is improving Atwater Avenue itself, including
Yeah.
the pedestrian way, have a full sidewalk to the path, and also improvements to the culvert. Those are the three major pieces of the escrow. That
Yeah.
culvert will most likely need a fairly significant rebuild. So they're contributing money to that.
That was gonna be my question on the escrow as well, because it just gives a total dollar amount of 1.3, and it's not broken down amongst the three items that are mentioned. So is the culvert work gonna gobble up all of that money so that we won't have anything for the pedestrian improvements or the bike lanes?
So all three need to get done as per the planning board condition. And Chuck needs to manage the dollars. So we're, he's committing to doing the work, because they're not responsible for 100%. We own some of that.
Okay.
So
Based on what we're paying for the other culvert, it sounds like really inexpensive work, so I'm just wondering how bad it is.
it is significantly less
Okay.
expensive.
Okay.
It's a relining of the culvert.
Okay.
And it's not a complete replacement. It's a whole, it's really apples and oranges compared to the two different culverts. So very,
So do we have an idea of what the cost of all these projects are and what percentage they're?
okay, so it's estimated that they're paying 100% for bike lane, for the upgrade, the Atwater Avenue. Then almost say 50% of the culvert, but that number is excluded me.
We feel that
We need to
that's,
get back to that percent.
we feel that those numbers are.
Yes, yeah, and we did do an escalation factor as well.
Yeah, that's,
I've got a question on the sewer line gets extended to the Atwater right of way. Where is that?
Where is it?
Yeah.
It's sort of before you sort of climb up into the back.
Okay. My question is, that gets extended there, and at some point, we may want to drag that sewer line all the way down Atwater Avenue,
Right.
because we're planning on building something there.
Exactly.
And all of this construction should go on at one time. I don't know how much disruption there is just to go to where the Mac.
Right, but
That's not much.
we want to go down Atwater Avenue before we repay that.
Absolutely. I
So
mean,
that's part of why this agreement came about. Because we can control the time.
right.
We have the dollars. When the timing is right for the town to do this, then we'll proceed.
So when you redo Atwater Avenue, you're putting a sewer line under there, all in one shot.
That's right.
So that's, all right.
Yeah.
Other questions. So they're paying a hookup fee of $414,000. There's a credit against that.
Yeah.
Is that a fixed number, or what if 10 years out, that's based on 27,600 a day? And if they use 15,000, are they out the money no matter what the story is on the hookup, even though
Yes.
the volume use might be
Yes.
perhaps a lot less?
So that 27.6 is based on assumptions about what sort of
Sure.
build up we're gonna do, and based on state per count flows. And so oftentimes those state numbers typically are Actual uses are typically 60% state flows. Because that's a,
And that's kind of my question, but the 414 is, that's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
based on $15 of that
Yeah.
structure. So then, yes, they're taking a bit of a risk by paying it upfront, but for them, they want the assurance that they have.
Yes.
So this is upfront for both phases. I got a little bit lost in the phases of the sewer connection and the phases of, and the phases of their build out. It's all their, both halves they're filled out in the first phase.
Yes. Yeah, phase 1 and phase 2. Part of that 27 cents.
Okay.
Phase 1 and phase 2 for TST.
Yes, okay. So if in the future they want to expand this, or is,
Beyond phase 2.
Yeah. Okay,
They would come back and purchase more flow.
okay,
If they needed, if they were coming in way low, they would really.
Yeah.
okay, okay. Okay,
So this, it's unusual for Manchester to be start allocating flow like this. It's been done in other communities certainly, but this is first of all, I'm not aware of a project that has done this before, but it's not unprecedented practice. It's just hasn't been done.
nor have we had a project of this size. What,
Ready for a motion?
um,
I move the select board approve the sewer and water easement agreement, Massworks sewer allocation agreement, and escrow agreement with South Signal.
Second,
John,
Yes.
John says yes, Kathy? Yes. And Jeff?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next is, budget updates, but I am tempted to put off the budget updates
Flip flop those.
and take up two people looking increasingly miserable. That's-
So those really comfortable.
Excite what? Yeah, that's what we get. The first of the, select, planning board articles, proposed articles, is just to remove. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is to remove the current applicability of select site plan review and replace it with an entirely or significantly different section. This is section 12.6.2 to be removed and a new 12.6.2. And I would suggest that in number 3, change of use requiring 5 rather than fire. Essentially, right now, the site plan is happens only if you have a project that's going to require 5 parking spaces. That didn't seem, it seemed as if there were other actions that might generate the site.
Yes, yes, for example, you could redevelop.
Just gonna ask you a little bit, just go through. The speaker will kick up a little better.
So for example, you could redevelop a site, take down property, redesign it, relay it out, and new use is gonna be requiring more than 5 new spaces. You wouldn't have to go through site plan review for that. Sorry. But but if that's why we have the new one written in so that you are redeveloping a site, adding on to the building or doing other variety of other changes, for commercial purposes, it needs to go through site plan. So, we have a little bit longer list because I picked out some specific things add in for clarity. So that's what we do.
No, it looks like they're trying to strengthen the site plan review process by adding other items that will trigger it, so. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. and that's-
Was there any element, you obviously have to put this together so it would conform with the state requirements for ADUs that went through, I don't know, last June or July or whatever it was.
This, I think, does not touch on ADUs.
No, that's, no, you're right, excuse me. Just site plan review. I mean, it touches on ADUs, but it touches on everything associated with site plan.
It touches on anything related to commercial development.
Right.
Or large, multifamily development, which is 3 units or greater. So,
But site plan review is already required for
For all of that, yeah.
ADUs.
well, the current site plan review bylaw
Ah.
in one of the other articles be removed. So site plan review will only happen concurrently with a special permit for larger than the protected use ADUs. So,
Okay,
so that's, yeah. We do not have it specifically in here. We do have something that says if another section of the zoning bylaw requires site plan review, then this section applies. So,
Yeah.
those other sections, we have other things that it requires.
Okay,
so. Okay. We go to the next. What I thought was first. This is removing entirely the introduction to the zoning bylaw. And the one comment that I got. I'm sorry, this is the order that they're in. No, it's not in time. Matter of fact, I'm trying to make it clear enough so that you can guess what I'm talking about. The one comment I've had on this is from Sarah Melish, pointing out that one of, that section 8 is now incorrect. Which is another reason for
Yes.
removing it.
Yeah, so the your introduction is it's currently laid out. First off, it's not required for Lord zoning. Gives a little bit of history about when zoning was adopted, and then it has some general requirements which basically reiterate the statute. Whatever statutes change, as you point out, the one about special permits, the other one had to do with town meeting adoption zoning, this requires 2/3. That's no longer the case for certain types of bylaws. And then the second page of the is just information about other laws and things that you may have to do if you're doing any sort of development. So again, it's something that could be revised and placed on the planning board website as an informational piece for outlining how to, try and get the zoning change, how the process works, what other laws, if you're trying to do development, might apply. So those are things that we add planning board page, but there really shouldn't be in the zoning bylaw.
So we don't have to have a town meeting vote every time the state changes the rules.
Duplicate information.
Questions?
for B.
Next. Is the ADU next to our, what the state calls protected ADUs and what we call standard ADUs and large ADUs. And I'm not going to try this.
So, the state calls them protected ADUs, and so those are accessory dwelling units that are less than 900 square feet in any district where you allow single family home to be built. So we allow single family homes to be built in all our districts with the exception of the LC. So, so accessory dwelling unit up to 900, detached or attached, protected use. So what we've done is, because we want to proposing to allow something larger than like this called them standards that are protected. I don't like that term. Standard size and then large size. Large size, the next thing we'll talk about. Likely. So in order to make this work, we have to remove our existing definition. We have to add the new one. We have to change our table of use, and then we have to remove the section that is all the details about accessory apartments, which is 9.1, on special housing provision in the bylaw, and then add new section for accessory dwelling units, the new 9.1. So that's what this bylaw can do. And you can reasonably attach conditions to what can be submitted for review and how you review it for accessory dwelling units, but it has to be within the scope of what the law allows.
Can I just back up a little bit?
Sure.
Pardon?
I'm not.
So just as an introduction, and I think you all know that the state did pass an ADU law, which means that our current ADU law is now invalid. So similar to the other, we've got to put something in place if we want to create something that helps Manchester. Otherwise, we can just ignore it, and whenever anyone applies for an ADU, we have to say, well, our law's invalid, so go ahead. So we tried to take the statute and put some guardrails around it that are allowed to hopefully make the best of the situation for our town. And then that's what our standard ADU proposed bylaw is. We have to have them. They have to be allowed by right. We can still have some guardrails.
So I had a question. So I like the guardrails that you put in, like, for example, one of them was, I think, a minimum 6-month lease. I think that's very important. My question is, I didn't see any specifics, and maybe it doesn't belong in the bylaw, but operationally, we need to have it. Who's managing the inventory of ADUs? And if they are supposed to have a lease of, a minimum of 6 months, operationally, how do you manage that? Because something that's in a bylaw that cannot be operationally managed is a pretty useless bylaw. So I'm curious as to what other towns do, but we know we don't have a good inventory right now. And that's part of our issue. We need to have one, and we need to manage it. And I just bring up the rental length. That was one operational condition. I'm not sure if there are others buried in here. I mean, a lot of what's in here is, a one-time check. The building inspector can look at it and ask you comply. But when there's something operational that needs to be managed, right, that has to be somebody's responsibility. Who's going to maintain the inventory? And who's gonna make sure these people are living by the rules that we set up, otherwise they're not very useful.
Yeah, in terms of operation, in terms of the lease arrangement, I think you'd want to require the owner to submit an affidavit, at least on an annual basis.
Right, so, but where is that managed? Is that managed out of your building inspector? But I think we don't have a good process and system for doing that right now, it's my guess. So I think that's something operationally we need to strengthen. Talk more about it when we talk about our short-term rental laws, because they're all related.
So I don't know if that can be here. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, that's hard to say.
So you may not be able to, may not want to put operational language in here, but if there's a penalty,
Well, the penalty would be a zoning violation, so let's say, go fine. You know, but, he starts renting it out on a weekly basis, you have the neighbor, and then you call the building inspector. He confirms that it's rotating past the characters every week. It's a zoning violation, so you would enforce it as you would any other zoning violation.
so where is the schedule of fines or punishments for zoning violations? And do we need something added specifically for these new use cases that we're adding to the zoning laws?
Well, it would be in our enforcement section of the zoning bylaw.
So that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
is there, is it in there that covers these operational scenarios that if there's a violation, we have a,
There is a
Penalty.
process. So,
Process of penalty.
there is a process and penalty, and so is that's part of the regular zoning? Okay. And have those been looked at to see if they are sufficient to deter negative behaviors?
Yeah, it's a fine for every day. Say it's $300.
$300 for what the party.
Thank you.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, I mean, to Kathy's point, this, we'll know what's going on prospectively. Retrospect, I don't even know how many ADUs we think we have in town. I don't think anybody knows that. And if we don't know, if some work isn't done or something, we aren't necessarily gonna discover them unless, I guess, neighbors ask about it, but I appreciate Kathy's
Well,
questions
I
along
think we want to
those
get
lines.
away from the snitch model.
Yeah, you don't depend on that. I mean, it may
We
happen.
do depend on it today, and I
It doesn't work.
to get away from the snitch model. It doesn't work, and it makes people very.
Yes, these are neighbors. These are neighbors. Yeah. Oh, good. So,
I've got a couple of detailed questions. In 9.1.3, number 1. It seems slightly ambiguous. Only one accessory dwelling unit will be permitted on a lot or in a structure. Can you do both?
At the same time?
Yeah, it's one on the lot and one in the structure.
That's
The intent was.
not the
That's
intent,
not the
obviously.
intent.
Okay, maybe that language could be strengthened.
Yeah.
Then number 9 is the Historic District Commission. Shall approve any changes to the exterior of the building. Can we put anything in that gives the Historic District Commission oversight over a new exterior freestanding ADU?
Yes. I don't think there's anything that prohibits,
Unless they're,
well, Not in a historic district.
No, in the historic district, a freestanding ADU. It would be nice if the historic district could have something to say about the exterior of it.
I think they can.
Okay.
It's like,
Number 9, of the building, which building is that? The existing building? If it's interior, or the new building, if it's exterior?
It's implied, right? It only applies to
Right.
the existing building that we're changing.
So we can clarify
Right.
that too.
But the law does seem to allow that, you can establish design standards and dimensional standards that are more restrictive or different from what is required for a single-family residential dwelling.
But it's some built-in garage.
Yeah.
One need to put the ADU above. We could clarify that to make sure that it's not an addition. Structured by existing.
So just one suggestion for ease of absorption of information, because these documents are so content rich. Whenever I see a list of more than 5 things, it screams for some type of categorization. You have things in here that are operational in nature, but you're going to need constant monitoring, like accessory dwelling units shall not be leased for a period of less than 6 months. Short-term rental shall not be permitted. No boarders shall be allowed. So those are things that are operational. They're not one-time things that we check, right? I would encourage you to, if possible, try and group these 15 items into things that might make it easier for people to absorb. So I just, whenever I see a laundry list of things like that, it sometimes you can lose the impact of what you're trying to do. It's some strengthens it to categorize people that if discussion.
And my other comment is just looking for clarification of why number 10 requires that essentially 1 water meter for the main primary dwelling and the ADU. As you know, we have a fairly aggressive system of water rates, and having 2 families would likely put them in a higher category than having 2 meters. And
The original idea required that they be the same, as well as number 11, which says accessory dwelling unit shall not be separated in title from a primary unit. It's just to reinforce that, so that you don't have 2 water sewer tilings. They're all in one. One meter.
So maybe it's a
One
phrasing thing though, to your point, maybe you don't want separate water mains, okay, or lines or sewer lines, but having different meters is something that's very common even in rental properties, you know. I don't know if there's language that can be more precise to, you know, do what you're trying to do without, to Ann's point, and, you know, causing people to get really big water bills because everybody's on one.
I would think that, I would think that the owner's best interest. If he doesn't want to get big water bill, then he should, bifurcate the treatment.
this says he's not allowed
He's not allowed to.
No,
that's what it
yeah.
is. Okay, yes.
And I understand the thinking there that for electricity and heat, that can be anything. Somebody's lives at 90 degrees, that's their business, but they gotta pay for that. Water, this is one property, and the big driver is irrigation, which ain't happening with an ADU because the primary property owner is really kind of controlling what's going on there. So I understand with water, it can't go real crap. I mean, how long can you take a shower?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
I've had teenagers for a while, but still, it doesn't get up into irrigation numbers, but I think maybe that's the thinking that's going on here. I mean, a lot of properties, water is just 1 meter, but all of the other stuff is separate meters if they're rental properties. But,
Yes, yes, usually that's the case.
but water is kind
So
of common
we-
because it's not.
Yeah, we didn't wanna get into cable and electric,
No.
you know, you all have the owner pay for everything, but that was, I think.
But I understand Ann's point. I mean, you know.
I think is there a way to phrase it so that, you know, to your point, they're not adding step, I don't know, what's the right language? Trunk line, you know, is there some, you know, DPW language that can be used to prohibit adding, you know, extra piping there and just allow them to have separate meters? I don't. You know. Rick?
Know that the, rental complex on Desmond Avenue, or I don't know. I have heard that the that they make a separate deal with the DPW because they have 5 or 7 apartments all on 1 meter, and the DPW calculates their water bill separately. I really don't,
We don't want that.
I don't like that, and I don't want that.
There are a few properties that are kind of like that in town.
Yeah.
I know Desmond is a lot of.
I'd like to speak to Lebanon Central, all right? About 4 years into the new ownership, we went in the regions, right? And so the same line comes into the building.
Yeah.
But it brought 6 different water meters in. And now the tenants are responsible for their,
Okay.
for water. So it's, I mean, it's just a matter of, doesn't seem so complex.
Right.
From the same water, some main to the building.
Yeah, so.
So, what, if I understand what we're looking for, since water and sewer are on the same meter essentially, that there be a single service, but can be separately metered. Yeah. Other questions on the general standard? Your understanding that this will be a 50% vote?
By right.
Yes. Standard, right? The next is accessory dwelling units large.
So the thought behind this one, you know, is this something the community wants or doesn't want? I mean, there are carriage houses already out there. Those obviously are large, you know, there are what would now be classified as an AD outfit. You could require a special permit, guardrails. Is it something the town wants or doesn't? Drafted a proposed regulation to put out there. We have choice on this one.
And this is,
These would be by special permit. All the previous conditions would still apply to these. And then there's a few additional requirements.
question, if there's no one, is not.
Right.
Well, but I think the town,
I know you probably.
I think we have a few. And one of my questions would be whether, I guess my first question is there's a significant definition on large with having sleeping, cooking, sanitary, and there's no equivalent on standard.
That's in the statute, I believe.
Is it different for a lot, so what's different other than the square footage?
Well, it's not required.
Okay, so an ADU is not, under the state statute, is not required to have sleeping.
Oh, no, it is, it is, yes,
Okay,
yes, that's not discussed.
that's, I guess, that's the gist of my question is, what's the difference between what's in the state statute versus the large ADU other than the size and the number of parking spaces?
Well, we can put restrictions on it, I mean, since it's not part of the state law.
So I guess I'm not clear on
So
what,
that first sentence is basically the first sentence of the definition of accessory dwelling unit in the statute. Or in the regulations.
Yes.
Okay, we don't want to, we've already gone
Right.
duplicating
right,
things
we
that
don't
are
want
in
to
statute. Okay, got it. There is no such definition for the standard because it's in the statute. We don't want to duplicate that.
Yes,
Got it, got it.
that's what I was trying to say.
And I assume that that includes A, which is the separate entrance. Okay,
Yes,
the thought just went through my head and it's probably stupid. Why not make it, the half the gross, floor area or 1,500 square feet, whichever is larger?
I was curious as to what's the special about 1,500 square feet, that's a small house. The starter home.
So if you have a 6,000 square foot,
Yeah.
this of which we have probably
Several.
number of them. That, then you could do a 3,000 square foot accessory dwelling,
I'll go to the second.
which is really a second house. And
Okay,
not quite the purchase of what.
okay, it's fine, it's fine.
I mean, I think the intent here is to mention is like a lot of carriage houses are, so someone,
I'm just
just like an apartment above the garage is okay for 900 square feet, but you have a large carriage house in the second story, it's 1,500 square or 1,400 square
Or-
feet.
or
Why should
1,900
they
square feet.
have to have only 900 square feet and have a backspace?
Mhm, yeah.
That they would do something with put up permits now and, yeah, so.
Right,
but there's no magic to it.
Right.
okay. It's something that the town can debate on, right? There will be hearings on this and we can hear from people other than me.
So the accessory dwelling unit, we actually posted for public hearing to get. Because that's the one there'll be a lot of discussion on for March 10th.
Mhm.
And we also, we did not post all of these because we will hold an official public hearing after we submit the final documents to the select board. On after March 10th. So we'll be holding one on March 10th for the two accessory dwelling units and the associate bunker.
So where did the
1,500 come from? Is that just a
It's,
nice sounding number?
I guess so.
Okay,
We sort of went back.
if someone asks the question.
Similar to your discussion, and.
Okay.
And no message.
Okay. And I think under 9.1.3, number 1 is a little, could be worded better. A unit may be within, attached to, or in a detached accessory structure. So you've got an accessory structure within an accessory structure?
Okay. We'll work on that.
I think you need a reference to the primary somewhere in there to distinguish. It's, John, do you have any,
This section, I'm good.
Kathy, Brian? Yeah. All right. And here we get to flood. Oh dear,
Do you want
I'm adrift.
to say what's happening about that?
So the floodplain bylaw, it's something I guess the planning board was working on until in 2023 and was required to update it. But, FEMA announced that we're gonna be updating maps as well for communities. So I believe, I'm not entirely sure. And I got put on hold until such time as the final map. Because then you'd have to go back to town meeting and re-adopt the final map. So we now have a deadline as to all communities, at least in the South River watershed, which we're in July 8th to have these adopted. So these are a bylaw which you need to adopt. There's various things we had to fill in order to make it comply with the requirements. And we modify it at all. We have to add and remove a few flood zones that we find here as well. So, and we have to reference the final maps, and the final maps haven't received an email this afternoon, so I believe with a link to what might be the final maps. I'm told that we'll have them for the planning board meeting on March 10th. So right now they're preliminary stage, however, we are not allowed to adopt preliminary yet. So sent emails to the state agency the whole timing that we need, and so they promised we will have final maps, so I need to check those maps to make sure they are labeled final and they can. Again, it's similar to the when we adopt the stormwater.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was some way that we could put a structure around this as we did with the stormwater regulations. So that an authority is established and the control of the regulations is given to a body that is not the town meeting. Which is what we did with the stormwater.
Just approve that town meeting, the stormwater.
Yeah,
the
the structure around it was approved at town meeting. The actual regulations are separated.
So when town meeting approved was authorizing the DPW to promulgate regulations.
Oh, yeah, I think this is
This
is one document, yeah. This is how they wanted it adopted. This document.
So it's required to be in the zone.
That's good.
We can ask town council.
That might be my question at town council, see if we can.
Just leave it.
They're pretty clear, you need to adopt this if you're, and again, remember, it's for so that people can obtain floods.
Yes,
So if
I,
you don't adopt it, then
You don't understand, it's just, so stormwater folks were amenable to having detailed regulation promulgated by basically our rather than town meeting. But as long as they were authorized by town meeting to do so.
What's the first question?
This is the sort of thing that turns people off town meeting. And it's the sort of thing that comes back to town meeting every time the regulations get changed.
That was basically the conversation. That was the narrative that wanted to change to begin with. There were only 25 pages. And let professionals boil it down to bullet points.
So the regulations that this would apply to this are the building code or building in floodplain.
So what's really changing is the map. Is that what you-
Yeah, and various other.
Yeah.
A lot more verbiage. From the district here and. Other special things, but eventually. The regulations are building code, section on building in floodplain.
This is allowing the floodplain.
Provided to. Follow.
Some communities are being prohibited. This is a flood.
But it prohibits use certain uses, but one.
So is this doing that? It's keeping it the way it is today.
Well, it's not the way it is today, but.
How is it different from the way it is today?
And this is where eyes glaze over.
Yes.
We need the pithy one pager that says this is what
This
is
is what
approved.
changed. Bing, bing, bing,
Yeah.
bing.
Okay. You can do that, put that together.
It's not on the floor?
I'll put that to 74.
Oh,
Yes.
either now or
Neither
neither now or a town meeting would be. Okay. Okay. So, so what I understand is that you will check with town council and see if there's some way that we can structure it as the stormwater was structured. So that,
Town meeting delegates responsibility for.
yeah, exactly, that's right. Yeah,
Not optimistic, but it's
No.
certainly worth asking.
and the other is that there will be a one-page, maybe 2 sides description of what this actually means. Thank you. Okay, and the next one, is associate members. And the stuff in bold is places where there was some disagreement how things should be done. But John, you have,
I'm trying to recall, this was a discussion a year ago,
yeah,
and I don't know what we settled, or did we not settle? I thought it was a joint.
So I think when you last visited, you had talked about having to joint.
Right.
So I think the planning board is opinion.
For all three of them, there was differences, which is why we posted this public hearing. Like, we listen, get feedback from the public or. Open up the final public hearing on the campus.
But the events of the past year have convinced everyone except I think one person that we need at least one associate member.
Yeah, you have, if you have an election and a tragedy,
Yes.
you don't have enough.
Huge matters, matters that require multiple extra meetings. And a year like that won't be good for a while, but what happened?
So what was the idea against having two? What was the,
Let's see, I'm trying to remember the argument.
Well, one of the things is that it's not a high level of activity. Like, so most things are settled within a few weeks. So having one extra member gives some flexibility in case of a conflict, someone has to down, someone misses the public meetings. So one seemed reasonable. So some people wanted to have two, just, kind of belts and suspenders, just to make sure that never without enough people voted on the special permit. So.
Well, I mean, this past year, and there's some situations where you lost two, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Conflict, health, I don't know, a bunch of different things. The odds of that happening are not high.
So I think, my thought is that, the planning board is certainly a very technical board. You get into a lot of, specificity that I support the need for an associate member, an alternate, like have an alternate on a jury. It's been my experience that when trying something new like this, it might be good just to take a baby step and start with one alternate and then see how that works. You'll get a sense pretty quickly as to whether or not that person is, how often they're needed and whether or not it's enough. So I think my suggestion would be just start small, start with one. Rather than go put a two right away.
Now, this is a person that's really going to attend all of the meetings because you don't know when that person's going to have to
Right.
step in.
That's correct.
Well, it's similar
So-
to the ZBA, they're a smaller board, they're appointed, but they have two associate members. So some people thought, why should the ZBA have two and we only have one, but we have more members.
You have seven, right?
Yes, right,
Right, yeah, so I mean, 9-person board is like
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
Yeah, where would you all sit? Yeah.
We have to stop at 7, I'm not just.
So a little different, so the CBA, they just sit on particular hearing.
Right.
Right.
So they're not coming to every meeting.
No.
When my experience always was,
Right.
we get a phone call, hey, so-and-so can't make it. So the first alternate would show up. All right, on the, SLB, all right, we had, I think it was called Murphy or whatever it was, but I think everyone showed up just in the off chance that something happened. But for the most part, it's, Sarah will know or someone will call it. Sarah always pulls the board, will you be able to make it, will you be able to make it, can't make it, then she'll get some. As opposed to the ongoing process with it. So it's a lot simpler and it's not time, it's time intensive.
My inclination is that the planning board have a hearing and come to its own decision. I think it's not of terrible great interest to the select board. Whether they have one or two or.
The other ones are going to have to manage it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think at least one's a good idea, but.
1, 2, maybe,
But doesn't.
but it will be a joint decision.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
gonna
important,
say.
it's got to be a joint
It's gotta
decision.
be a joint decision because the planning board, when we appoint members to the planning board itself, that is a joint decision, right? And I think we don't think we want to deviate from that for an associate member.
No, but I'm in favor of one. I think you're putting a big demand on people because in fact, they have to be pretty much at every meeting because you don't know what's going to filter down to an eventual vote of some sort. And that's hard.
Yeah.
Find two people. So I would shoot for one and
Well, maybe just open it for two and just be satisfied, because the problem is finding volunteers to do it,
yes,
you know, and that's gonna drive the engine right there.
I think that's all of them. Yeah. Nope.
Okay.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good comments.
Fine. Thank you. You can stay and find it fascinating.
I go home and warm up.
Okay, we skipped the FY 26 budget updates. In order to let people come up.
So, as mentioned, on this meeting is quite good, with plus, plus capital, operating capital. Set up for March 3rd, have a joint meeting. Finance committee to review in more detail, capital numbers, and to spend more time on capital and facility. Plus, it includes some of the additions that the audit was recommending, that original audit. So right now, if you add up everything, the school budget at 5.4% increase, which is right. Could be higher with the health insurance situation. You have about 3.1%. Because of that, higher for the school budget. And school budget, I'm sorry, I'm smoking. The 5.4, it's coming in at about 2.25. And with the increase 6% range for Manchester, 7.5% overall. Manchester would be closer, I'm sorry, be closer to 7% for Manchester. Let me back up. I'm throwing the numbers at you. Let me be clear. So at a school budget increase of about 5.4% overall, this translates to a 4.8 for Manchester. The overall budget increase for taxes is coming in about 2.25. If you have a budget from the school that accommodates the full 27% hike health insurance, which is the one they have from their current period, that translates to 6.8% hike for Manchester, driving our total tax increase up to about 3.1%.
That's the mid-range budget in this school.
Yes. Yes.
that 6.8 Manchester translates to what for the school budget?
7.5.
7.5. Okay.
Essex at that 7.5 is looking at it.
At 6.8.
So the big issue here is school budget. So that doesn't. Well, it's over this outside, but in terms of what is the big issue before us, certainly the school budget. So there is a finance subcommittee of the school committee. That will meet on the 26th. To run through a number of scenarios. Basically, the service, they present that. One scenario will present this mid-range, which should have their final health insurance numbers by then. Their sense of what it is. This week. Carriers for the health insurance. Be shocked if it was less than 20%. They will get that 27 back closer to 20.
27.
Was that?
27 seems crazy.
But it's but even some buyer people were rated at 26, 25, 26. But because the buffers on how the end, the highest was 20%.
So does 20% result in a 7.5% increase?
No, I've got to assume the full 27.
Well, 7.5 assumes the full 27. Okay.
What's, do you know what percentage of their overall budget? I tried to look at this. I can find it. What percentage insurance is of their overall budget?
I don't know that offhand.
No, but you're poking at the right thing, Jeff. I mean,
I tried to find it. I can't. I didn't see it.
The crux of the problem that was
You
discussed,
have to take it out. There's the spreadsheet has the health insurance, has a stats on line item. I haven't taken it out.
but I think the bigger issue that was discussed at least 2, if not 3 years ago, was that you have declining enrollment, but the costs are still going up exponentially, right? So you have a structural problem. Okay, your fixed costs are too high for the amount of customers that you're serving. And so when you're in this kind of situation, there typically has to be a discussion, a painful discussion about restructuring. And they were supposed to have a strategic planning session one summer. We had one of these difficult budget years. I can't remember if it was 22 or 23. They committed to that. I can find no evidence that happened. But until we deal with the structural issues, you're just dying by 1,000 cuts. You know, they're cutting what they can from the variable costs, but the problem is that you're serving fewer people, and you still get the same fixed costs. So there's some real structural, it's painful discussion, but we're going to continue to die by 1,000 cuts until somebody's willing to have that conversation. I don't know if maybe influence that, right? But I tried to go back in my notes to find the exact meeting where the school district and the school committee committed to holding strategic planning sessions during the summer. It was either 2022 or 2023, and nothing happened. And that, to me, is why we are where we are again.
Meeting on February 26th. Is that a meeting of the
school? It's meeting of the finance subcommittee for the school committee. Plus the invited to government countries that they cannot see that they were subject. So it's so you and Sarah representing the finance committee. And then
you and Brendan,
yes,
and
and 2 from the Essex finance committee, and
yes,
then 2 from the school.
right.
So that's the core team. there's a desire to open to people to attend to observe. If we can post it as a special select board meeting, others would like to attend. Open to have the call to do the discussing. So this is 26th at 10 a.m. at Essex County. There. On the third floor. Space. So, let's do our best to go forward. The school committee, I think that the administration preparing the different scenarios, including what the school looks like if indeed it needs to make significant cuts. We need to commit a budget that avoids overrides. It's short publishing.
Right, the problems in the future going down the road, you get a lot of stuff. You're gonna be looking at a school, you're gonna be looking at teachers and contracts and what other contracts they have. I mean, this is gonna be a runaway train fast. It already is.
It already is.
I mean, it already is, but it's, we'll scheme ahead. I don't know.
I think that's why that plan was so important.
Right, I mean, you gotta, well, believe me, I'm all for education, but breaks on somewhere.
I think what people are doing is fine. Is that biggest voting block, is seniors. And I think people are gonna be surprised on both sides, both towns, as to how many people will vote against this major run. So I think it's Kathy himself to try to cut from the other side. Because I don't think it's good.
This problem is not going to ever get better until you restructure. And I did find in my notes from 2023 that the last time a major strategic structuring conversation took place, I think it was 2012. I mean, it's long overdue for them to have a strategic discussion about the structure of the district. And this can't solve problems like this long term without having those very painful discussions. Especially, if enrollment was going up, the discussion would be totally different.
Right.
But that if your fixed costs are aren't changing and your enrollment's going down, it's math.
So they have managed over the last 8 years because have dropped in enrollment by eliminating positions.
Yeah, variable costs, okay, and you can only cut that so far.
No, that's fixed cost of teachers, right?
Well,
I don't know.
it's proportion to, I think of things like buildings and, real, contracts that are long-term, things you can't change, but, letting go of personnel is a variable cost, you can make those decisions.
Sure.
But my concern is it's the big, and we're talking about a new building, I mean, we've got to have some tough conversations about the true fixed cost here. And I know there's another, so then the contracts are up, the teachers' contracts are up, was it next year or? Okay, well, our financial boundaries put on that discussion, other towns have gone through some very painful things we don't want to go through. But at the same time, we don't have a blank check. We don't have a checkbook. So I just think there's got to be some cooperation between finance committees and whoever does the negotiating on those contracts. I feel like perhaps the last contract negotiation, I don't know how closely, that was worked out through the incomes. It wasn't.
It's not.
Right. Okay, so I didn't know for sure, but
No, the school is an independent
I
entity.
understand it's an independent entity, but we are all in this together,
Right.
right? And if we weren't a district, then, you'd have tighter control, obviously, because, but there's gotta be some financial boundary conversations before those.
You said, on the 26th, there's gonna be a discussion, I'll come up with a couple of scenarios. One of which will be fitting within Proposition 2.5.
I think they'll present this.
From whose perspective? Essex's perspective or Manchester's perspective? Oh, that's always the lowest common denominator. And is that going to probably involve one-shot solutions, which is the last shot that we have?
That's all we have for this year, we're gonna do.
Or you don't know?
Well, they will, I think the goal is to present, 3 or 4 years. Each scenario.
So that would be interesting.
That would,
However, again, as enrollment continues to go down, if they are not willing to have a strategic plan and a structural conversation about restructuring, then those 3 and 4 year plans are really, how much are we gonna keep going up, every year? It's
So the dynamic is one of the players, Essex, will not entertain any discussion of not having a new Essex elementary school.
that's okay, but it doesn't have to be identical to Maury.
So that would be,
Well,
K-6, K-5.
K through 12, K through 2. Okay. There are different structures and we might wind up, we might need to open up the agreement, whatever. But if people are interested in saving these, it's got to be willing to have these discussions. But brick and mortar and land is, it's just, brick.
that's something the district needs to think about expanding what the district is. Supervisory union with another town or another district.
Absolutely.
A conversation with Rockport.
Rockport,
Not just in the city, but
the small.
Okay, so they bring them in.
Yeah.
If Rockport comes into the district,
Those are the types of structural changes that they should be discussing in what's their strategy, right? AP classes, if there's only 5 kids in an AP chemistry class, are we, combining our AP classes with other towns? What are we doing strategically? And I just haven't, maybe if they've had those discussions and I'm wrong, please point me in the right direction. I've looked and I can't find.
that last meeting a couple of years ago at the high school.
Yeah.
Everyone saved my French class. I didn't know that many people took French anymore. I took French at the other times. We can't look out for the, so there, as Kathy's point, and look at some things,
So what I remember from that meeting though, every single parent, child, and teacher begged to keep their programming. Not one individual talked about the building. I don't have a nice building. I don't have a nice athletic fields. They didn't mention those things at all. It was all, I want my humans. I want my teachers. I want these programs so I can get into a good college if that's my career path. It was about the humans. And my concern is the budget is just gonna have the difficult conversations.
I am concerned. I'm hearing things here that I haven't heard in meetings with the school. And I would like you, Greg, to suggest to Pam that members of the finance committee and school and select board who are present should be allowed to speak.
Good.
Having a strong opinion and not being allowed to speak, it's not a way to find a solution.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. You know. So, maybe the 26th isn't the time to do it, but it needs to be a full swatch. It's getting.
It's way late. It's already way
Yeah,
late.
I agree. It's almost March.
It's 2 days from March until 26th. So,
Either do the new form. People can be candid. It's not. It's not getting solved. So are you guys publishing an agenda for the 26th meeting?
I think the agenda is going to be something like
Open discussion.
school budget looking forward.
But not just fiscal year 26.
No, not just for school. But my understanding is it's been built as subcommittees, B, that others may observe. So it's okay, that's.
Yeah. It's not your decision.
It's a minority votes, especially. This was very strong, just to be so. Saying that that's correct, just reporting to you.
Will it be recorded or online?
Sorry,
Will it be online?
it'll be hybrid,
And recorded.
but yes. Yeah,
I forgot to say that.
it's 70%. But when it came in, so this is recording, so I think we recovered.
Right.
So, we try to set up a special meeting with the school committee.
Maybe that's right.
Stanford.
And if we owe it to the citizens of Manchester, join. And the school committee says no, then. Look at something else.
So when?
Certainly not June.
No. No, I
So, they're meeting on the 4th. We have to, whatever this subcommittee comes up with scenarios, we just have that in hand. And then perhaps on the 4th, at their regular meeting, they could have hour dedicated to joint conversation with both towns.
or
I have asked.
Was there been appetite from the Essex board of selectmen?
Yes, I'd like to think.
Trying to do the same, right? What we have here is a classic example of two parents fighting and the kids getting hurt. Okay. And we gotta pull it together to get the kids. So, sometimes parents have to make the efforts, not just guts. Simplify this and it'll be. That's the way I like it.
Kids taking off the house.
Actually, I think, I would hope that the Essex Select Board would understand that, I think they have some support on this select board for helping to keep the cost down. And having whatever conversations are necessary to, work on the restructuring of the district to make that happen.
I would say the conversation today has been, Essex, the message is you're spending too much. The class sizes are too small.
The select board, the school board members from Essex or both?
No, I'd say the select board and finance committee.
Okay, I don't finance. Yeah.
So I think sometimes,
But they also said that they are adamant about their case through.
but then they're gonna give somewhere else, but I guess I think how we talk about things and the language that we use either help further the conversation or set it back. So I just don't want them to have the perception that Manchester is just encouraging spending because we can. I don't think that's the position of our town. We want great education for the kids, but we want a fiscally responsible way of doing it, and I hope they understand it.
And the other thing too is you're gonna build a school in Essex. Desi's gonna make you build this school bigger than what you need.
Exactly.
And your population is going down. You're gonna end up with 2 half-empty elementary schools. That doesn't make sense.
I think this is not a conversation that you should have in the task force in the middle of a select, school committee meeting. The school committee is very adamant that they start at 6 and end at 8:30, and people leave even with, discussion open. I think we need a separate date for this. And I was going to say March 6th, which is a Thursday. And they will object that they don't have to meet.
Yeah. It's back on our joint meeting with FinCom on March 3rd. So gonna focus on the numbers, et cetera. I think I would like to make sure we are discussing the proposed headcount increases. The additional hours or additional FTEs, whatever. I think we need to have a specific conversation on the rationale for that, so I'm not sold on this. And you said the capital would be up.
Budget updates. Okay, we've had some of the town meeting articles. And I didn't see. Maybe it's, what are the articles that are likely to come from the select? Or that may come from the select. That was in.
So, we found the short-term rental bylaw. The question of sidewalk clear.
I think it fell off my email, the one you sent me on the roster, and our email is cleaned out every 30 days. I tried to look for it. Would you mind resending that? I also, based on the conversations we had at the Connect 351 conference, I think Cape Cod is further along in the thinking on short-term rentals like Provincetown. They really got it nailed, so I tried to pull that off the whip. And I was trying to compare it to the Gloucester one, and I couldn't find the Gloucester one, but I think the Provincetown one is streamlined. It felt smaller and easier to read. But they had a real bad problem there with losing affordable housing, losing housing.
Yeah.
And I think they maybe I've been there thinking.
On the noise, do you know what cell signaling is currently doing? Are they following the 8 o'clock rule? Liz Walker, this time, sorry, says she's reasonably happy. Maybe somebody could reach out to the cell signaling and see if they have a problem before we spend a lot of time solving problems.
I think the only thing I would make sure we take a look at though is the repercussions for not adhering to whatever it is we say we want to do.
Yeah.
We talked about the fact that the fines may just be.
The signs are out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think we need to readjust the fines. I mean, you know, that's the cost of doing business. I mean, if we really want to have a consequence, fine should be consequential.
Well, either fines or loss of permits.
Well, lots of permits, yeah, some sort of consequence that's real.
Yeah, and we probably ought to look at if we decide that this is something we need to take up now. The list of things that are considered noisy is a little
Yes.
odd.
Yes, you want to get that right before we start pushing.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I mean, this would affect all construction.
Or landscaping.
So, I
and
mean, when this culvert starts, that's gonna be
That's
right in
different.
people's living room.
It's gonna be right in people's living room, but that's covered in anything that's town oriented. I think
There's a separation.
there's a separation for emergency. Yeah,
But people don't like it when government gives. It's a waiver and others don't.
yeah.
Well, that's yet to be determined as to what the timing is and all of that. That's put it out. I understand your.
So you said mention the sidewalk clearing that, you may want to have an ordinance for that.
Got a question about that. Can we put on the website what sidewalks are normally cleared by the town? I know we've got a list somewhere.
So they drew a picture with
It's
color coded lines. I have to say the
Right.
graphic is not entirely accurate. So they need to take another look at it. And I think we want to, understand the period of performance, I guess. I mean, you know, if they try and clear a sidewalk 3 days after the storm, when it's all iced over, it's gonna be like, still like, a surfacing a moon. So there are. Well,
yeah.
so I think, I think we just gotta get a little crisper on what we're asking the DPW to do. And is the budget we are going to approve for them that cover what they need in order to accommodate that? And specifically, I'm wondering about the equipment. You hear a lot of rumors, oh, I can't clear Lower Pine Street because the sidewalk is too narrow. Well, somehow they found a way to do it this year. I'm very happy. But so there's a lot of urban legend around the sidewalk clearing. Do they have the right equipment? Are they just pushing the snow or actually removing it? So I think when we discuss our budget, we want to understand, what do we want the sidewalks to look like downtown? And is it just downtown? I heard like Ocean Street or in that area, other beaches have sidewalks. Are we supposed to be cleaning those on Summer Street or whatever? Is it just the downtown? So what's the expectation? Does the budget cover what we say we're going to do?
Wasn't part of this though, having homeowners responsible for in front of their house?
That's often the solution, but at least in my experience, some people do it, some people don't. And nobody gets the regular, fire line is not enforced. And
I mean,
And-
personally, I'm not really a fan of it.
yeah, I think if we do all of the things that Kathy's been talking about. What are the areas, what is the equipment needed? What is
Just
the
be
expectation?
clear what the expectations are. And then make sure, you know, the DPW will do it.
Right, like my road, sometimes, some years it's done, some years.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot. Yeah, and that's what bothers people.
Is it on the
It's a
map?
crapshoot.
No.
Mine's on the map and it's a
Yeah,
crapshoot.
yours is on the map, and I know it was described to me. Has the map actually been put on the website
Yeah,
now?
it was on social media, that's why I saw it.
Okay, all right, social media. I think we ought to put it up there and see what happens. I've had inquiries over the past 3 months from 3 people, but it's all been areas that are covered by snow plowing or by sidewalk plowing here. It hasn't been somebody way out on Summer Street that says, hey, how come nobody's plowing? It's all been general, in town, sorts of activities.
And I think it's a cultural thing here. I have to be honest, this is the first place I've lived in New England. Where a homeowner or a property owner is not required to do the sidewalk in front of their house. Or this concept of the town doing it is new to me.
And people actually do it.
If the businesses wanted people to come in their store, my father was out there with a snow blower and he cleared,
Okay,
yeah, absolutely. And
and in neighborhoods
Yeah.
where, okay.
Yeah. because it was part of the culture. And some cities do ticket, like it's Cambridge or Somerville, you don't
And
clear your sidewalk, you get a
Gloucester
ticket.
requires,
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, some people don't vote.
but you know, but again, it's culture, so there's. no-
maybe we could work on, rather than having a bylaw this year, start by working with, make sure that the expectations are right, and then start
Yeah,
That's
start
right, yeah,
setting out the message, be a good citizen.
yeah, agree. I think we just have to be really clear on, to your point. What is the DPW gonna do, and what are they not gonna do? And despite the little drawings put on social media, it's still not there.
but there's nothing on the town website.
Well, I didn't look to see if that same drawing was on the town website,
Okay, well, I would like to see that up there under DPW,
but,
so.
and whatever they put out there, they gotta do, it's gonna be consistent.
And Tiffany, probably before the season starts, Tiffany has to, the season starts.
Right, I mean, some towns actually publish a list of streets, this is phase 1, this is phase 2. You know, you do this 24 hours after the storm, 48 hours, you know, so towns have a different way of setting expectations, but. I think we still aren't quite there.
I don't wanna get into a problem, I mean, we are an engaging community, I don't wanna get into a situation where we have elderly people on shoveling sidewalks.
Or you have 5 different contractors shoveling on the same block, right, you know, because everyone's doing the same, so I think in the, you know, congested
And then
areas,
somebody
it
plows
makes
the
sense.
driveway and closes up.
Exactly, it makes sense for the town to do a certain area, but, they need to do it. They don't
so-
always do it.
We'll
So that means-
put this on the discussion list for next meeting, on the. Because we can talk to each other, but we need to have Chuck or somebody.
Okay, quit it right down.
The senior center bond, how do we feel about that? The discussion has been that the senior center will be built out with donations. But if we wait until we have all the donations in hand before we do anything, the seniors are all gonna be dead.
We're literally dying.
If we take a bond and the donations don't meet payments, then the town is on the hook for it.
I think you would know, so it's a time. Say we ask for the voters to approve the bond this coming time.
Mhm.
Assuming it gets approved. The design work will be taking place from April through September. Conservation get fundraising underway in a meaningful way in September. We're using the time between now and then to do the legwork, plan it out, identify key donors. Start a quiet phase before we go fundraising. And so I think so design work completed by September, October, up to bid October, maybe by the first year, we have a contractor and a firm price forward. About at the same time, we will have known how successful the fall fundraising. At that point, you can decide do you go forward with the project or not.
It's tough to, do we need monies appropriated from the spring town meeting to do the design? Or could this be
Yeah,
a
so-
fall town meeting?
No, you would need it for the spring.
So it's not just authorizing the bond, we will take out the bond before we know how the fundraising is going.
Yes.
Okay,
But the
That's
design,
right.
the design would be separate.
Right, so design, well, you could use a portion of the bond, but probably simpler to just appropriate those dollars. So for example, we had money in the capital budget for the library. Windows, turned out that came in much lower and CPC is covering the costs. We can take those same dollars and use it for design work of the seems
Okay, so that money's out there.
the money's there, obviously. we
Just need to reallocate it.
It wouldn't affect. the-
I'm all in favor of pulling a bond to get this thing rolling. But I guess one of my questions is, do you think if people know there's a bond out there, would they be less likely to donate?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah. Those
and
kind
the
of
immediacy issue goes away.
then the town is on the hook.
Yeah, no, I heard that question a lot. And they used the example of Dawson Library. So they did, it's a $30 million project. The private library that the city was fronting the library, they approved the bond before the fundraising. It's still not out. Still not, even though they started construction. Well,
People also see, people see
the
the
controversy is
concerns, construction really starting, and it's real. People find that the fundraising is done correctly, will work. It's, like, Fred mentions the library. I was working with a group putting the YMCA, this is probably 20 years ago. At that point, mass development was going to be funded upfront. Wow. Yeah, so the fundraising and construction and currently, and the goal here would be to tie it to debt. At Birmingham. So it's incumbent upon us to maintain the sense of urgency to get this done.
I would want to know what the fundraisers think.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I say, hey, have you gone through situations where people have put a bond out there before and now you're fundraising in that atmosphere?
So the answer is yes, they have. They've done it both ways.
Well, I want to know what they're thinking.
So,
Well, you have to, I mean, if you've got the money to do the design. Why would we, I still don't understand why we have to try to bond in the spring meeting versus.
well, you could wait till the fall.
Yeah.
We want to move to
You've got the money.
I'm
the-
inclined.
It's a design.
It's
Yeah,
fine
do
to
the
do
design
that.
work, maybe that'll get people excited about it.
I think no matter what though, I mean, realistically, you're gonna have to pull it on.
Right.
Want to do it next
You're
3
gonna
years.
need the bond. You're
And
not,
that
You don't
work.
have to spend
you're
it.
not gonna have all the money. You're gonna have pledges over years, people are gonna donate differently. So to sign that contract for the construction, you're gonna need that bond. So when you do the bond in the spring, fall,
You're not gonna spend the money.
Now, the bond would not be
Loaded.
it's just permission to do so.
I just,
Just permission to do
I
so.
think it gives a really positive, message to prove it sooner rather than.
I would not,
Yeah. That is.
And if you know you're not gonna actually obtain the bond until you're secure with the money, then I think it's a big risk in doing it earlier rather than later.
and again, to the point. Seniors have been hearing this being kicked down the road for 10 years.
It's a long time.
Okay. Okay, and the fact that they approved it unanimously last year for the purchase. We're almost there for the PNS, PNS, okay? And I think that it shows our commitment to the seniors as well. And the community's commitment to the seniors as well. And there's no downsides of approving it.
In the spring.
And well, in the spring, there's no downside.
I think your message needs to be clear that you're approving the bond so that when we have demonstrated successful fundraising, you can proceed.
And maybe that's the word.
So maybe you could clarify what successful fundraising means. You know, at what point, how much money do you have to, what percentage of the estimated project cost do we need to collect via fundraising? So put some target.
75%, is it 80%?
Of that bond, right, so that way,
Right. I think you're 75, 80%.
whatever it is, but I think we need to be crisp when we would pull the trigger, so to speak, on actually spending the money.
Was the original intent that this was to be 100% through fundraising? What was
Yes,
the original?
the build out.
Yeah.
The acquisition was by the town.
Purchased by town funds and then construction
Construction would be 100%.
donated funds.
And that's still the case.
It's still a case.
No, I'm just wondering what the expectation was from the beginning.
Now, what we had mentioned, and this is what I'm hearing a lot, is that we told the voters last year that this was going to be through fundraising. Now we've changed that profile of it. I think it was due to a lot of things, including rising construction costs, waiting 2 years for a fundraising, and then starting to break ground. We're talking 4 years before people are going to occupy the space, as opposed to why can't you do construction and fundraising come? So, to your
But
point, maybe by groundbreaking, we have to have, by the anticipated groundbreaking, we have to have 50 or 60 or 70% of the funds in hand.
You gotta give them some targets, otherwise the town's gonna wind up footing the bill for one thing. For in majority, so, you know.
Town will authorizes the bond in the spring. Do the fundraising and not actually take your money, so.
Yeah.
So you as the select board have that final say as to
When?
you hold it up.
Okay. Is that,
That's good. I just think we should specify that as part of the warrant article, what our intention is. So whatever, you know, I look for your guidance, Greg, and what an appropriate target is, like groundbreaking or whatever, right?
We lost the professionals on that.
That's the professionals, but I think that's needed to show the residents that, hey, we're really not gonna spend your money unless we've been, you know, this successful in fundraising. I think that'd be helpful.
What would the terms of the bond be? How
Well, before we make sure it's called, so that we can pay it off. But typically, a construction bond is 30 years.
and you can pay that off early without penalties? So
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oops.
Okay.
uh, with snow removal, we're going to talk to the DPW and make sure everybody understands and try and get the word out that if you're a good person, you shovel your lawn. The noise. There are a lot of ways going. One thing we don't want to do is put a lot of effort into a bylaw that isn't needed, a bylaw change that isn't needed. Make sure that we can come up with something. If we come up with something, it should meet the needs of CST and right. And with a short-term rental, we'd look to get the information from Gloucester and Provincetown and
Let's see if there's a few, something from the shutdown, maybe.
yeah. The Gloucester one seemed complicated and long.
Yeah, that's why I was looking for others.
Okay, that sounds like an annual town meeting. The draft, operational audit, we'll be talking about it at our next meeting with the, you did it. But, the initial comments.
I thought it was good. The only real question I had was pairing up the harbor master with the fire department. I don't think that's gonna work.
I think
Okay.
I think it's better if we just call it all public safety.
And the harbor should be its own.
Right.
Yeah. Its own department. I don't think it should be paired with,
But who does it report to?
to the town administrator.
So I think, you know, it seems like the operational audit was certainly very focused on organizational structure. And he made some suggestions, some of which we may want to encourage the next town administrator to adopt. Others we may want to dissuade, you know, he or she from adopting, but ultimately we are expecting a new leader to come in here and that person ought to have a say in, you know, what happens. This is kind of a information gathering for that new person so they can, gives them a leg up on thoughts. But I was a little disappointed that it was, didn't focus very much on the services that we provide and whether or not we have any underutilized services. And they mentioned introducing technology more, but I'd like to see more specificity here. Where? Which departments? When they start talking about adding headcount in the accounting department, my red flag goes up right away. Anything that is compliance-based, departments that we have that are essentially the same in every town and city because we are trying to comply with state or federal laws. We're not unique. We should be automating the heck out of it, but partnering with other towns. We should not be adding headcount without a real thorough understanding of why. So those are kind of red flags for me. Like I said, I was a little disappointed that they didn't go a little bit more into the services that we're providing and whether or not they saw opportunities for, you know, streamlining the services and the personnel themselves. Those kind of.
I looked at it and, again, like Kathy said, yeah, it's very organizational oriented. My first reaction is that we're very lucky. We've worked on a shoestring here for I don't know how long, and nobody's been hit by a bus or died or anything like that. Everything has pretty much worked. And the organizational proposal that's been put together is really an insurance policy against some disaster hitting because we've got nobody to step into a lot of these roles, some of these years. Unplanned. Yeah.
Well, so that's different though. Succession planning doesn't mean hire from within, and that's my my disagreement with
Yeah.
the author of the document.
They,
Because when you're dealing with departments that are compliance based, you know, the accounting, the town clerk, everybody in every town does the same stuff, okay? There's not necessarily unique expertise in Manchester, so you can hire from the outside, like we just did with our town clerk. You know, so you don't duplicate headcount for the purposes of succession planning unless it is a rather unique role that Manchester, you know, would have a hard time filling. You know, in the event of those kind of maybe disabilities.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we operate a whole lot differently than the Wenhams or the Essexes or the Rowleys of the
Oh, we're
world.
very different from Essex.
Yes, we are.
That's philosophical.
No, it's also operationally and every.
But, you know, I mean, we've got departments of
No,
one. We tend to have departments of one. And the suggestion is, let's spend upwards of $500,000 to put a bunch of people in here, so you kind of got an insurance policy. And I don't see that necessarily that changes the job descriptions, the activities that need to be done a lot. That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
To the taxpayer. I think that's very difficult. But there are a couple of spots where I can see something working out in finance, et cetera. But, it was an educational report. I think it was good, and it kind of convinced me or told me that I suspected we were doing the right things, and we are. So it's encouraging and kind of a roadmap to follow down the road, but money-wise, it's going to be a challenge to try and deal with some of these issues as he has encouraged us to do.
I agree with them.
I thought parts of it were sloppy. And if you get, well, like description of the harbor being funded by slips.
Mhm.
If, or that it was originally a fishing village. It was a furniture making village. If you're not paying attention to the details that I know about,
Doesn't give you confidence.
it doesn't give me confidence. Yep. So,
What's they have to say? Be here next month, next time.
Yep.
Highlighted version of the report. But generally, I would like to hear more specifically from where they think we should be leveraging. Because most of what we do in this building is compliance related, the automated.
Anything else that can't wait for 3 weeks? Okay, liaison updates.
I don't really have anything, we pretty much covered all my, yesterday.
Brian?
I'm gonna think this.
Kathy?
Mike and Ted was meeting as we were, and downtown improvements meeting tomorrow morning, so I'll have an update next.
We've certainly covered the school problems.
If I look at that, the historic commission did not meet this month. DPW is having a tough time trying to get a better price on the wayfinding signs. They're still looking for
Oh, I was
them.
gonna ask about that.
They wanted a ton of money. And they're trying to cut like $10,000 for, I don't know.
6 signs.
Yeah. Or 8 signs or so. It was really crazy. And they were cutting it a little bit, but I don't think they're looking hard. You know, saving 10% is not what I had in mind. So they're still.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. Regarding downtown improvement, we have talked about the fact that since the community center is hopefully not an option, we do need a decision on bathrooms for the summer season. So Greg, can we put that on our action item list so we don't forget about it? I don't know what the options are, but we've got to have bathrooms. We should be able to make some kind of decisions and get something in place before it gets warm.
The chamber, I think it's next week. Yes.
Okay. Meeting minutes. Mr. Reynolds.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Yes, let's see. I move that the board approve the consent agenda, which consists of minutes.
So,
Can I break that into two? I cannot vote on the February 3rd minutes. So let me say, I make a motion to approve the January 30th minutes. Yes,
Further discussion.
yes.
Ann says yes, Kathy, Brian. Yes. And Jeff.
And then I will make a motion to approve the February 3rd minutes.
Second. Okay.
This name.
Yes, Kathy, Brian,
Yes.
Jeff, okay. Town administrators report.
And so actually, that's already DPW. The third one, I believe. No, they are, this thing, I don't know. No.
Sorry, that was something like.
Well, this is, you're optimistic about being this.
Okay, can we make sure that when we talk about these, I'm a little bit concerned that we are under an assumption that the decision's already been made, that everything's gonna move on the other side of the highway, and I don't think we have deliberated on that as a board. So I hope that we will see options for keeping at least the fire department on this side of the highway.
Everything's on the table.
Okay, I just feel like we've been talking about it as a big campus over there on School Street, everything's gonna be over there, and we haven't talked about it. We have not agreed.
But until we know that that's possible,
Right,
then
I just don't want that to be the only option we talk.
So. Stephen, Central Street Culvert. Chatting out there on social media for sure. It is a critically important project. I can't underscore that. And yes, there are other culverts that are also critical. Along Salt Mill Road. You start at the downstream, you work your way up. It's been the mantra for 10 years now.
Are they in our capital plans, by the way? The other culverts?
Not specifically, there's about 40 million in resiliency projects
So
without specifying exactly what kind. So that obviously needs a lot more detail, but there's at least being targeted, budgeted that way. So we're continuously getting it fully permitted, and getting it out to bid. People are anxious to know about the construction schedule and what will there be one lane open and for how long. You will have those details once we have a contractor on. Working with that contractor on the specifics are going to be all laid out. Well, in advance of it's done. So, you know, people are anxious to hear that. Just, we need to get there. But we're coming, hopefully by the beginning of summer. We have that information, have a contractor start specifying those kind of details. Similarly, on water meters, again, desire for some more details on what meters are actually being used, type they are, that sort of thing. Again, we need to choose the vendor. There's 3 or 4 different models out there. Once that selection has been made, then we can provide those kind of details. So there's good information on both projects. We're trying to populate it with additional information on the website. We'll continue to do that. But we won't have all the information until we have those vendors and contractors set up.
We have it by town meeting.
Yes. Certainly have a lot of years.
Okay.
Don't know what's called. That's possible. Probably gonna be looking to. Need it?
If we on the culvert, is it possible to have none like what we did for 48? Maybe to discuss the concerns, the impacts. I know we don't have much information at this point. But
I would simply do the history or all the information. We have a tremendous amount of information.
we found, I think that we learned an awful lot from the 48 presentations. You and I briefly about just sitting down with people if they wanted to and just let them ask the question. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Somebody go to the Manchester Club.
Pardon?
Go to the Manchester Club and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
Figure some, we need some, less more information.
Yeah, but it's just now getting.
We don't have any answers. I mean, that will affect everybody quite a bit. None of the other issues, 40A or anything, and maybe you have an interest.
This will
affect everyone in a very big way.
This will be a major construction project that will have an impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Where do we stand on this walkway thing? Is that kind of moving along?
Yeah, just a temporary wall.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's good.
yeah, we're planning.
Well, I'm good. I'm glad they
Yeah, we'll use one of the gangways to.
Yeah.
Go over the.
touch point, gangway long.
Let's, yeah,
It's gonna run behind Seaside, right?
Yes,
But, where's the grant situation?
yeah, so far so good. No word that that's being impacted in terms of the federal dollars. So far they granted us extensions. Keep going. Anxious to get it underway so that we don't have to ask for extensions anymore. At some point, they're gonna say sorry.
Right.
Time's up. So far so good.
Second.
Yes.
Ann says yes, Kathy,
Yes.
Brian and Jeff.
Yes. And yes.